Hey, it's Nathan. Welcome to the Tech Glow Up. Most of the time when I talk with people on this show, they have the opportunity to say, well, we're building disruptive, deep technologies, but at least we're not, at least it's not rocket science. Well, my guest this week is actually using tools like augmented reality, 3D scanning, digital twins, and so much more to actually build rockets and to help engineers and scientists who are working on space locomotion. My guest this week is Alex Goldberg, who is a technical product manager at Blue Origin. If you are a nerd about smart glasses, digital twins, IoT, and some of the amazing ways that you can build business tools with 3D data and sensors, you are going to love this episode. Now, Alex works at the rocket and space technology company Blue Origin. This conversation isn't directly about his work there, but Alex talks about a number of the different kinds of projects and technologies that he uses to help some of the smartest, most capable people in the world work better, work faster, collaborate together, while most of the time working in deep tech and startups and technology innovation isn't rocket science. I'm super thrilled to share an episode where we start to touch a little bit on the rocket science part of how far these technologies can go. I hope you enjoy listening to Alex Goldberg from Blue Origin. Awesome. Hello and welcome to the Tech Glow Up. I'm Nathan C., and today I'm talking with Alex Goldberg, Senior Technical Product Manager of XR at Blue Origin. Oh my gosh, Alex, it is so great to talk to you. I have been wanting to deep dive with you for quite a while. Thank you for joining me on the Tech Glow Up.
My pleasure. I was flattered to receive a message from you that you wanted me on your podcast. I've been a fan of yours for years, a fan of you personally, seeing you at events through the years, and I've also been a fan of the show, your podcast as well. Do you remember? I was a huge fanboy of Torch.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Where Nathan used to work.
Thank you for
audience.
Thank you for that. Torch was my first XR marketing director role. And I was thrilled that a Portland company working in augmented reality was ready to go to market and needed marketing leadership. And I have to tell you, our early customers made everything we did worth it. It was like we were so fired up every single day because of the notes and like projects that people would share with us. It was the best time for that kind of relationship with a user base was just fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if we're jumping ahead by bringing that up. Maybe we could save that for later on my journey.
That's the genius of editing. We'll just put it where it flows. And Alex, thank you for the compliments, but this show is all about you. For those who haven't been following your work, could you please introduce yourself and the work that you do in innovation at Blue Origin?
Sure. So I'm Alex Goldberg, product manager at Blue Origin, which I think we covered when Nathan introduced me. I've been passionate about spatial computing my entire life. Before there was a name XR or spatial computing, I fantasized about these types of technologies. This is just intuitively where things should go. That experiences can be anchored to reality in a manner that is intuitive and provides utility is the future.
Amazing. So can you, and as much or as little as you're able, can you talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you do with XR in an organization like Blue Origin?
Sure. So at Blue, I lead what we call AR for M, augmented reality for manufacturing. and another initiative called reality capture, which is creating digital. I can see you're excited about that, which is awesome. I should also disclaim before we get too far into the interview that this isn't a Blue Origin interview. This is an interview with Alex Goldberg. So I need to keep it very high level at Blue. They keep us on a short leash with what we can discuss, but I think I can do a good job keeping the stuff in reference to Blue Origin at a high level and have it still be very useful and interesting to your audience. Yeah, so I lead AR for M and reality capture. There's a through line there with the digital twins and the spatial data then being leveraged to build AR scenes. There's a lot of other consumption channels of reality capture technology that we could socialize and disseminate throughout Blue. And even for contractors that need to come on site and have an understanding of what the space looks like for work that is going to be done, like construction type of people, there is a really strong and totally rad through line of taking my as built environment and designing AR experiences around that type of data.
On the topic of taking it up just a little bit high level, and the idea of using augmented reality for manufacturing, I could imagine a couple different ways that this might show up, right? Like maybe I'm somebody who's like a fabricator or a line worker with a headset that's like giving overlays and assistive. I could also imagine there's a lot of talk about AI smart assistants. Where are you
Sure.
passionate?
Let me talk a little bit about the program because I know you're dying to know, and I know people find it interesting. And I'll have to keep it high level, as I disclaimed. Remote assist, the ability for somebody on the shop floor who is stuck at something, who's blocked, to invoke a call to subject matter expert that is offsite and then get unblocked is a huge win. AR glasses have forward-facing cameras on them. All of these 6DoF SLAM-enabled, or anything AR rather, because they're now AI devices that don't have cameras on them. I'll talk about those in a second. But anyway, the AR devices that offer remote assist, huge win in heavy manufacturing. As I said, to have an SME offsite be remoted in to unblock you, as well as training somebody who isn't familiar with the space and letting them jump in and see from your first person perspective. There's also really neat odd wins with those types of solutions. Like for instance, somebody can put a headset on, kick off a remote assist client, and then create annotation sets of their workspace, and then using the image capture or full motion video capture of the device on their own without invoking a call to an SME offsite, just in a solo experience, create notes and instructions for the work that's around them because you see the space through their point of view, and then the tools in remote assist solutions that let you draw and add images. It's a great way to extract still images and full motion video from a solo session using that type of a service. So it's hidden in plain sight that you can do that. And that's a really exciting way to leverage that type of technology. Remote assist for what it's designed to do, remote assist for some of the other sort of sneaky, unexpected wins. Work instructions in augmented reality. There are a number of SaaS solutions out there. Scope AR's solution, WorkLink, Tactile, I think, has Manifest. My buddy Sven has a company called Sphere. These are all great AR work instruction solutions. So the spirit of those is for heavy manufacturing to take instructions from what in heavy manufacturing we refer to as an MES, a manufacturing execution system, which is where work is articulated and tracked at companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX and Toyota. And so they all have MESs. And the goal of AR work instruction solutions, the North Star rather, and we're getting there, collectively speaking, is to seamlessly convert what lives in an MES to be granular step-by-step work instructions, and ideally tell you when you're not doing something right. Don't think we're there yet on the correction, on the ability to correct a user on if they're doing something right or wrong. But I think we're finally there for converting wholesale MES work instructions to be AR work instructions. What I'm a fan of right now, and with the kind of team that we have at Blue, isn't granular work instructions. I think for people in my role at companies like Blue, providing an AR, like an infographic on steroids, I think right now is the big win. And let me tell you why. Because the rate for most items that are being worked on at cutting edge aerospace, heavy manufacturing companies, things are changing so quickly in the back end that it's hard to keep an AR solution that's a couple steps removed from where those check-ins occur. And those check-ins happen in a PLM, which is a content management system. It's called product lifecycle management. And it's where all the CAD models live. Those check-ins happen faster than solutions can usually keep up with. And the end environment where that manufacturing is conducted isn't typically the same work cell in every location. But if you have a mature that's being developed and a standalone work cell that one product and a specific team that's working on it, that is then perhaps ripe to do the MES conversion to granular work instructions with some of those solutions that I rattled off a second ago from some of those amazing vendors like Scope, Sphere, and Tactile, for instance. But you don't usually have those affordances, especially at a company like Blue, where we're iterating rapidly. So I like to put helpful tips in AR for the things that people are trying to do, not really spoon feeding them the instructions, although I think we will get there. So that's a little bit about
Yeah.
that's a little bit about what I do in AR specific to heavy manufacturing. Actually, that's just a sliver of it because there's so many different flavors of all those things and how I go about building them. I'm just going to jump to reality capture, and then you could perhaps
Right.
interrogate me on AR and reality capture if I can
Yeah.
be
Perfect.
a host or something like that. But I think that might be a good flow for us. So for reality capture, we are at Blue, we are learning our way into what type of refresh cadence, how often we need to update those models. What is a digital twin? Does it need to have IoT? Does it need to have physics? Does it need to be a one for one with what that place looks like right now? Or can we do scans every 6 months? And does that provide enough utility? So figuring out where that needle sits on the refresh capture and the types of customers that we have at Blue is very important to defining what a reality capture program is. We did have scan techs that were able to perform captures, and we had a white glove service. We're set up a little bit differently now where I am in a think tank and designing solutions with like the old adage, teach a person to fish. So instead of showing up doing white glove service, both for AR and reality capture, deploying technologies and then creating a documentation and a wiki for people to take the ball and run with it. I'm still doing a lot of the white glove service because it wasn't as easy as a transition into this newer think tank model. That's a little bit
Oh, I
about
love it.
my two areas of focus.
Yeah.
I
Thank
also
you.
had,
And
I also have teammates that focus on virtual reality as well, which I don't focus on too much, but every now and then I will moonlight on a VR session. We have virtual reality design reviews with VR labs set up in our manufacturing centers and offices for people to collaborate and do human factors type of assessments in VR.
yo, I love it. One of the very interesting challenges that you presented that I honestly was not expecting was how hard it can be to keep up the documentation for a team that's constantly innovating, right? I bet, any listener out there has some software tool that they're using, whether it's like a Jira for project
Sure.
management or a
Of
design
course.
tool
GR.
right? Like where you're constantly having to refresh because there's an update. When you're working, one of the things that I love about your applications of these deep technologies like augmented reality capture and scanning is that they are in service of the thing that almost everybody else gets to claim, at least we're not building rockets. And your actual job is at the complexity, at the demands for safety, for accuracy. There's so many things driving that like you're actually enabling rocket science in some cases with the things that you're doing and building not just new communication modes, but building the future of locomotion and like
Sure.
really enabling this top tier science with it. How Oh gosh, in our earlier conversations, like I asked you this question, how frequently do you launch? And you were like, Nathan, we launch rocket ships. We're not launching like marketing campaigns.
Sure.
I'm curious, like, how do you approach your work when you're working on these cutting edge technologies? Like that balance between speed of learning and like quality of experience or like utility. Like, how do you balance like speed, learning, and like the high stakes that you're often around?
So I have so much to say there. I love the way you positioned all of that. I think earlier on you asked me about my career path, and I said a bunch of things about fantasizing about XR that I did my whole life. I've been so actually so I didn't really answer the question the first time. I said some cute, fun stuff that I don't think I did a great job answering. I think it might have made decent content, fingers crossed. But actually, my second job, actually, it's interesting. I moved to California for skateboarding as a kid. I was really into skateboarding, and I was struggling, and I was to make ends meet because I lived in San Francisco, and even in the '90s, I was incredibly expensive. I my first job was at a video arcade, a virtual reality arcade in the San Francisco's Embarcadero Center, working on like Amiga towers that were stacked together. A company called Virtuality, a British company. You might remember Virtuality was a company, you might have seen them from Johnny Mnemonic, where Keanu Reeves wore that big clunky headset. And so I had an introduction to a single controller, big clunky VR headset, flat shaded polys. Dactyl Nightmare was an exciting multiplayer game. In fact, there was no AI. You had to play with an opponent, a human opponent, and often when people showed up by themselves as an employee, I would go in there and be their opponents. Again, that was cool to get to do that for my job when I was 19. And then where I was going with this, and I thought I would talk about VR for a second because that was technically my first job at the VR arcade. And that was a brief, essentially retail job in a mall. Have you? My first real software development job at a game company was at a game studio called Rocket Science Games in San Francisco, South of Market neighborhood. I was assistant lead tester on Rocket Jockey, a Windows 95 game. There's a Wikipedia page for it somewhere. And we had a Myst clone. If you guys remember the graphic adventure Myst, many of you do. There was one called Obsidian that Rocket Science made as well. So my first software development job was at Rocket Science Games. So it's a little bit about my career arc where I started as a Windows 95 game tester. But the interesting thing about that story that I was compelled to share with you was the name of the company. And now I guess perhaps I've come full circle by being surrounded by actual rocket scientists, not just a play on words. There are times that when I show up at a build stand where we're building a component for a space vehicle, and these brilliant manufacturing engineers from all walks of life at Blue, ex-military, top school educated people, people that grew up turning wrenches with their dad in their garage, building hot rods, and weren't formally educated, but are amazing engineers nonetheless. That's just the kind of the people that I sit and work with. that kind of group that I just tried to describe. There's been a few occasions where they've called me a wizard or the rocket scientist. And that's just mind blowing when you get to see the stuff that we built at Blue. And for guys like us, Nathan, we understand what's involved with building these solutions. So it's step by step. It makes sense how we took a model and we use computer vision and we have SLAM to recognize where you are. But it seems amazing to the uninitiated. Yes, I wanted to cover that regarding the kinds of people that I work with. And I think people in XR would get a kick out of actual rocket scientists finding one of us to be a wizard.
That XR is magic. Yeah. I hope everyone working in XR feels a little bit cooler about their work as a result. I love this idea of thinking about your customers, right? I often think about who is the customer, what's the use of the technology, how are we actually like making people's days better? And in your case, it really sounds like helping these engineers, these rocket scientists, these fabricators working in like very technical, niche, like high level places, that these are the customers that you're introducing technologies to. And while I worked on an augmented reality app for like mobile designers, right, you have a very different audience than I was trying to serve at Torch. How do you like to learn from and understand how these tools can impact machinists and manufacturers and engineers? Like, do we have the same kinds of inputs and like feedback cycles?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to my advantage. So here's a little bit of insight into my process. I find out what team members are the most excited about the technology, which is many of them, but you'll find some people hesitant because of the camera. They might feel like they're being spied on, or they're very happy with the way that they do things and they're hesitant to embrace change. That's wherever you go, you're going to encounter the latter of those two. And I try to find the people that are most excited and that understand the workflow of what it takes to build these types of solutions. So a little bit of onboarding there. So I like to find boots on the ground that are stoked on the technology. And then I like to meet with leadership for those respective groups, the stakeholders, and let them know the wins that this technology provides. So I have smooth sailing throughout that group. I have leadership asking them to move forward and the guys on the shop floor super stoked to move forward. I think that there's important aspects, like I mentioned, regarding the maturity and the amount of check-ins. You want something, so you're not playing a game of whack-a-mole where you can keep parity of the model that they'll be experiencing, and then figuring out what solution works best. Is it deploying something on a tablet? Is it deploying an app that is native on a headset? Or should we use an edge compute paradigm to stream it? That's usually poly count and slowdown coming into play there to do a streaming solution. There's also a major manufacturer that is ceasing production of one of the headsets of the largest user installed base. Cryptically, I guess, talking about the HoloLens 2. Audience members, before the call started, I was telling Nathan that I can't get into details on some products, some technologies we use, but that cat was already out of the bag. So from other talks where I let the cat out, am I going to invest bespoke development into a hardware unit that is being discontinued? Or should I have stuff running in the background that can run on that unit and then onto device X once we start to bring that on? Or is this going to be an ephemeral experience that's going to be a one-off for a team? So maybe that hardware unit would be good for that. So there's a number of factors specific to AR. Is it going to be passive, where you just have that infographic on steroid? Or are there going to be interactions where they're activating and deactivating us and having different types of tooltips appear? So All of these things are key for my requirements gathering to then build something. I usually build a rapid prototype, and then I have smarter, better developers on my team than me that then I'm able to, with a rapid prototype and a couple meetings, articulate what that is, and then have somebody build something that is productized. That, yeah.
Amazing. The ability to right. So much of spatial computing is like a show, don't tell, right? Like you can tell somebody as much as you want about a thing, but until they actually see it and understand it in space, it's very hard. So I love that inclusion of prototyping and that always collaborating methodology, right? Like that you have developers, you have stakeholder leadership, and you have boots on the ground.
And
The
there's
yeah.
one more thing I want to mention, that is when you're doing proof of concepts, how to make sure that has the legs and doesn't stay in POC purgatory. Because I think that's a huge component. And before we drifted onto another subject, I wanted to wrap up. I think that's an important aspect to include
Oh,
in the,
no, goodness. Proof of concept purgatory,
yeah.
this idea that in a large enterprise, there
Yep.
can be these like blips of innovation
Mhm.
that get initial investment, and then they lose interest, they lose the thread, they lose the importance. Maybe a stakeholder moves on, and so there's this super cool project that maybe that's probably defined some really amazing value or a great opportunity, but like how it gets out to the rest of the org, how it starts to actually live its full potential can be so difficult. Like how
100%.
even when you're worth a bunch of technologists who are trying to build spaceships, what's the best use of our time to get there is that's a hard choice to make. Like how do you negotiate those conversations?
So I bring them along for the ride, as my manager likes to say. I find who those respective figures in leadership are, and I make sure that they're stoked on this thing that's in POC and get them chomping at the bit to use that technology. So there's a groundswell of interest in the C-suite around this, and then they're just dying to get their hands on it. I think it really comes down to having more people stoked on what you're trying to do and bringing them along for the ride. Showing prepared for the customer to understand what you're building, and then taking the ball in a direction that you didn't even expect as a product manager, and the different ways that they view this solution, because after it's out in the wild, people start doing things differently. I love the surprises that happen, the way that people will do something that I didn't expect, but yet is intuitive for what that team needs to do that I might not have even been aware of when I originally built the solution for them. Often I will meet with them, feel like batted out of the park. And then 6 months later, somebody on that team's using that tool in a wild and novel way. And I love giving yourself the room for that to happen, and not showing up prescriptive is a key to success, I think.
A couple times you've noted, right? We launched a thing and there was this additional value because we were able to test and learn about it, right? We put a training out there and now this technician's making a lot of great resources or that folks are using tools in brand new ways. Like if you're so focused on perfecting just the thing you set out to build, those signals of, hey, there's other value here, there's this whole untapped idea that we haven't even touched, aren't as easy to find. I love that. I think of rocket building as something that's pretty planful. You know where you're going, you know the timeline, you know the budgets, but that idea that there's flexibility and creativity along the way is super cool to hear.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to mention something else regarding giving people the room and being a good listener. I think the spatial computing community will find it exciting that on their own, my exposure is to blue, but I think that this could happen anywhere. I built a solution. I can't get into details about the solution that I built, but it involved the QR codes being placed, and then the QR code invoking an experience that involves somebody being locked into that physical position and a perspective right next to where the QR code is in their world space. So if there was a QR code here, I scan it and then have information that's provided about my desk, for instance, because that's here next to this QR code. And the point I'm getting at here is, because I know that's very basic stuff, what I just said, but there's a mind shift,
Spatial data.
which is that the information that is being accessed via the QR code, even though that information lives on a server, which could just be a computer at somebody else's desk or a wiki page or something like that, that is now being invoked from scanning that QR code. There's a very fun and what I think is exciting disconnect that's happening on the shop floor, which is the people that are scanning those QR codes and getting the information that is attached to that QR code. They're not viewing that info as something that lives on a server or information that could have been got from different websites that they would have had to drill down to. They actually view that information as living in that space. Let's say a compliance officer needed to get compliance information for machinery. Instead of going to look up that machinery in a suite of services for compliance and then going to that part ID, or instead of going to that specific part and then seeing if there's a compliance tag hanging off of it or some kind of closeout that might have physically left something on that part, you can go to these locations, these stations, these perspectives, and scan that QR code and then get the information that is associated with that spot that they're standing. And people are looking at those locations as the home of that info. So they're saying, and I don't need to keep another bookmark, a tab on my computer. I don't need to go to the website. I know I could just have my mobile device or headset and go and scan the QR code and the information lives there. So it's true spatial computing. Information is now living where that QR code lives, even though we all know that data lives elsewhere and that there's other ways you can get to those softwares.
Yeah. Introducing these different perspectives, these locations where you can get information, that you've actually started to build a new reference model
That's exactly
for how and where data is stored.
That's
And
exactly
so
right.
much, we're talking on flat computers, and that was based off of a flat file model. And I can think of instances where having a bunch of data in a specific location might be a challenge or a limit. But what I'm hearing you say is that the frame for how people are approaching their work is based on the floor. It's based on moving between stations. It's based on physical objects. And so the relationship between the data being spatial and the work that they're doing being spatial has a very innate connection that
100%.
they're drawing on their own without you having to explain it.
Bookmark tab is overloaded. Gives me the info.
Yeah.
Over here.
And it's very much like the promise of always on smart AI glasses, right? Is that you have information that relates to where you are and what you're doing. I love it that you have it built for the right space, for the right kind of information on the shop floor. So Alex, I think it's time to talk about a glow up. Some deep ideas around using augmented reality for heavy machinery and manufacturing. Some very interesting ideas about how data can be used and activated in space, especially with heads-up and AR displays. As somebody who is building new technologies, trying to empower teams using the latest and greatest, do you have a glow up or 6-month short-term goals that you're working on to transform or bring to the work that you're doing?
Gosh, how can I do this in a safe way where I don't violate any super top secret
Or
stuff?
if you need to, is there a glow up that you hope to see in the field of AR in heavy manufacturing, or even just the field of augmented reality itself?
I think there's a few obvious glow ups. That word is now in my lexicon. We're glowing up the scene. I think a game changer is going to be spatial temporal analytics. So the ability to debug manufacturing, I think, is going to be one of the biggest game changers over the next 5 years, maybe. I think it's going to kick into high gear soon. Instead of having static freeze frames of time where the reality captured digital twin is, the change that I'm trying to describe is going to be capturing an array of sensors that are indexing temporally the physical space. There's going to be some short tail wins and some long tail wins with this type of a technology that I'm excited about in this glow up of sorts. I think you'll be able to embed IoT sensors into that solution. You'll be able to have browser-based point clouds that people could jump into and see real-time feeds of the activity occurring in that space, as opposed to 2D video. You'll have, depending on your array of sensors, the ability to move around XYZ axis points and fly around the space of a stream of a capture. The reporting analytics, the training data that you'll be able to capture to then be able to conduct a root cause analysis is going to be significantly improved due to the amount of data and the way that a chronological capturing of all the work cells and a flow of products, starting from the additive manufacturing level where a part is created, however it is fabricated in a foundry or in a 3D printer, and then where it's moved to a development stand, and then where it's then moved to be manufactured and then incorporated into the part that is being built, and then that part being assembled and then stacked, in Blue's case, stacked as rocket components, and then upright, stood up and flown. If we can capture with the type of capture technology, that array of sensors, there are experts in each one of those work cells in theory, but there isn't an expert that has knowledge of what happened to that part, the entire life cycle of it. And I think that AI is going to be a big win for understanding the life cycle of a component and being able to execute a root cause analysis to get to the bottom of a query that is being thrown at this thing.
That's
I
amazing.
think that is going to be a major game changer in manufacturing. I think that data, so I talked about some of the short tail, long tail ways to leverage that is those point clouds could be converted into photorealistic Gaussian splats. The spatial geometry can be used for augmented reality solution design, having the understanding of the physical space hyper relevant because it's real time of what the shop floor looks like that you're then leveraging to do that. Something I'm very excited about is what I refer to as model reconciliation. In manufacturing, there's this as built versus as designed paradigm where in which something that is built rarely matches what is designed, mostly for good reasons. You could catch something where it should have matched it, or you can understand why it changed to something else. The reconciliation that I'm referring to is capturing the as-built version, sending it back upstream to the CAD PLM, and making sure anybody at the respective manufacturer could jump into the PLM and see not just the as-designed model, but to see what this thing actually looks like after it's deployed, so you could build something that is going to be attached to it properly. Believe it or not, that's not happening in most manufacturers. I think having real-time captures, that spatial temporal analytics for the short and long tail, and wins like model reconciliation are just going to be a game changer.
This idea of spatial temporal understanding, my brain immediately went to it's an MRI for problem solving, right? Like you can zoom in and out in the process and understand how things took a turn. Absolutely amazing. Gaussian splatting's just got to this fantastic 3D sort of space where 3D environments are so easy, and I'm just blown away. Can we do them over time? It blows me away.
We are making great headway in animating and workflows where you can bring them into development environments like Unity and Unreal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The heavy manufacturing facilities feels like a great place where like sensor arrays, all of that like real-time data feed in like a studio environment or in a cinematic environment, those start to be limits. But when I think about them applied on a manufacturing floor, like you probably already have sensors, you probably already have observability. And so taking use of those pre-existing systems or
Yes,
standards.
and there are some vendors out there that have solutions that are trying to leverage like security cameras and what can be inferred from those video feeds. And we've already seen a lot of AI inference against a full motion video. And then there are other solutions that involve updating captured devices with LiDAR sensors. Depends on your environment, depends on what you want to do. But there are vendor solutions that can take the ball and run with, like security camera feeds, as I just said.
Yeah.
And then there's other ones that are requiring new sensors to be installed.
Yeah. Amazing. Alex, questions that I've just been loving to ask innovators is about the role of mentors. Sometimes it can be fans or coaches or even family members. But when you're doing hard things on the edge of what's possible, sometimes having somebody say, I see what you're trying to do, I believe you, keep going, can just be transformational. Can you share a moment of how a mentor, coach, fan has helped you level up in the work that you do?
Gosh, I've had great mentors throughout my life. My uncle, Uncle Eric, I'll send you this link, Uncle Lee. He's always been a great inspiration to me. He was an anesthesiologist and then went on to be an attorney specializing in medical malpractice and was into video games, took me to video arcades when I was a kid and just has always been amazing. And my stepfather, Alan, has always been an inspiration. My good friend in my teens and 20s, JT, is no longer with us, and I miss you, JT. What did all those people have in common? They were awesome. They were fun to hang out with. And they were creative and also into technology. It's funny, Alan, my stepfather, got me to buy the iPhone right when it came out in 2007. He was more into it than me at the start. But one of these, to your point, I think people that are just stoked, that want to listen to you and that are able to give you feedback and steer you in the right direction. I feel like when we're out, folks like me that are, I feel like we're really out there, like on the bleeding edge. So we're getting inspiration from everywhere. Like in my LinkedIn feed, I love to see the stuff that people are doing with like Arduinos and Raspberry Pi microcontrollers and guys like Caden and Bauback, Caden at Mantra, Bauback at Brilliant Labs, where they're going with assisted reality devices. Guys like Alan Smithson and Julie, who always bring this stoke to me. Alan is a mentor and a buddy. Paul Reynolds and Josh and all the guys at Torch, my partner at REI.
Amazing.
Just people that will listen to you and I think specific to us, understand the technology and maybe call us out on a blind spot. My teammate Ivan is great at that. He's a brilliant spatial computing technologist. And sometimes I start moving too fast and he calls me out on something that I might have missed.
That's important.
And I love
Having a
the
collaborator that can center is so important. Alex, I so appreciate that. And it's time for the speed round. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So if there were one takeaway that listeners should walk away from our chat today with, what should it be?
I think the thing that I was mentioning before of giving people room to experiment with your spatial computing solutions and listening and watching the way that they do things and using that for inspiration to provide customer solutions is a big takeaway. Understanding the requirements and giving yourself the personal latitude to get creative in the way that you build a solution. I built something using reality capture that is seemingly an AR solution. If you're able, there are lots of different ways to provide people with the data that they're looking for. Don't pigeonhole yourself into one type of an approach. I think that's important.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I think it's at least 2 takeaways, but we will take it. So, Alex, totally optional, but do you have a spicy soundbite to share? A hot take on trends, technology, culture?
Oh boy, I have one that is spicy. How do I say it without being jerkish? The audience could know that I really didn't want to. I don't believe I virtual reality is awesome, and I play tons of games on my Quest. I think VR is very niche. Gamers will like it, and there is utility for the average person as well. I think we're inexorably racing towards lightweight wear all day glasses. First, we'll have the assisted reality from vendors like Meta with the Ray-Ban displays, Mentra, and Brilliant Labs, companies like that that are releasing those types of devices. But soon we're going to have that form factor with SLAM 6DOF enabled AR. I think that's the future. I think in 3 to 5 years, we're going to have that type of a device. I'm knocking on wood. I don't give a flying bleep about Project Muha pass-through VR devices and mixed reality devices. I think Vario XR4 and the Enterprise and the amazing pass-through for doing flight simulations and awesome. And HTC Vives and other VR devices for collaborative design reviews and Quest for gaming, awesome. But I think mixed reality right now is going to shift to see-through AR and then as an afterthought to the immersive VR devices. So that's my hot take.
Getting close to veering out of the speed round, so I'm going to keep it super focused. But Alex, the last question is simply, how can people follow up or learn more?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. I don't post that often, lots of heart symbols and thumbs up. And I enjoy having a curated feed. So if you want to see the stuff I like and maybe make a comment to occasionally, I post often. But you can keep
Catch
track
you at
of
all the spatial computing events and the enterprise
So I am
panels.
active in those. I saw you at the MIT Reality Hack last year, and I always see you at I did AES this year, and I also am active in the reality capture community. Matthew Bird runs a web portal called Reality Capture Network and also has a conference series that I'm very active in. So yeah, I am active in those things. And people like you keep reaching out to me to do these kinds of things. I
Catch
guess
Alex on the circuit. Building XR tools that rocket engineers and scientists can use to be more effective, more collaborative, more measured, and even start to use predictive analysis to improve the kind of things that they're doing. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and different parts of the work that you do. It's been such a pleasure.
it has been a pleasure. Thank you for everything. Thank you for doing these interviews. Thank you for all your support, raising the bar in XR, Nathan.
Yeah. If that's what I'm going to be known for, I will take it.